This is by far the greatest college football series we've ever witnessed. 2 games, very entertaining, start to finish. None were really blowouts. Every game was close for a majority of the game. A lot of lead changes. Just 2 very entertaining games, which is what we haven't had. And I think really this is the first time that we can actually look back at the committee and be satisfied with the decisions that they made of who and who not should get in. We kind of looked at Alabama. Well, I'm not gonna say me because I wasn't really with it, but a lot of people looked at Alabama being outside the top 10. I mean the top 4, and looking like, yo, Alabama's better than Michigan or Ohio State or a TCU. And a lot of people just weren't feeling 2 Big Ten teams, getting into the Final Four, and it paid off. We got the 2 most entertaining games of the college football era by far. Georgia versus Ohio State, another instant classic. Georgia pulls out. TCU versus Michigan. Again, we're going to get into all those things. But I just want to give the committee their props, because a lot of times, y'all, we always trash the committee, right? It's always a decision. We always really focus on what the committee doesn't do and their flaws, and we really never acknowledge when they're right. So I want to give props to the committee first for, getting it right, because it was clear that these were the 4 best teams in the nation, and they proved us right. So props to the committee for getting this decision right and for providing us with these 2 very entertaining games from start to finish. Harbaugh has done these last 2 seasons has done a phenomenal job with the Michigan program. Beating Ohio State, your arch rival, back-to-back years, getting to the playoffs back-to-back years. After a lot of people wrote him off, it's been amazing what he's been able to do with this program. However, that had to be one of the most horrendous play calling, decision-making games by a head coach or play callers in general that I've ever seen in a bowl game or in a college football game. From the start, Donovan Edwards busts out the gate, right out the gate, 70 yards running. I'm like, okay, this is about to be Michigan and Ohio State again. Remember, JJ McCarthy clearly stated in the press, like, yo, if they're gonna stack the box, like, we just gonna play smash mouth, right? And out the gate, a 70-yard run. I'm like, okay, they not playing. 4th down and goal. And again, what killed Michigan, their play calling in the red zone is what killed them. Their first 3 possessions in the red zone were either turnover on downs, or field goals, right? First red zone trip, you get there because of Edwards. You got 1st down, 2nd down, 3rd down. Couldn't convert, right? On 4th and goal, you do a Philly special. They weren't even in man coverage. You do a Philly special against a zone. That's not going to work. Okay? That's not going to work. So, you give the ball up on turnover on downs. You're at the 1 and you do a fullback dive. Like, a fullback dive. Not only that, a fullback dive to a guy who was playing linebacker last season? Really? Really, Harbaugh? That's what we're calling? Fullback dive at the 1 to a guy who was playing defense last year? So again, not smart play calling at all. In the playoffs, there is no margin for error. You need all the points you can get, especially when you're turning the ball over at the goal line, making dumb decisions. On their next trip, they run a screenplay that had no chance. And the guy even seen it. The quarterback seen the play before they hiked the ball. So again, 3 in the first half, 3 trips into the red zone, 3 dumb decisions. You go in to have, I know, by the way, I still haven't mentioned the picks. Still haven't mentioned the picks. And I've heard a lot of people say, oh man, JJ McCarthy has to play better. JJ McCarthy is the reason why Michigan lost this game. Listen, I'm not saying JJ McCarthy's off the hook, but if you look at the second half, when Michigan decided to give JJ McCarthy the ball, when they were in the red zone, they were scoring points. When they decided, okay, if we're in the red zone, forget all the trickery, just put the ball in JJ McCarthy's hands, they started scoring. I don't understand why they didn't do that in the first place. I don't know why they were running Philly special plays, all these trickery plays, handing the ball to the fullback plays. Like, just keep it simple. Just keep it simple. What got you here is the bread and butter with JJ McCarthy running the football and Donovan Edwards. Like, I don't understand. So a lot of people saying, oh, it's JJ's fault that they lost. Well, if you're going to say that, at least acknowledge the fact that the reason why they got back into the game was because of JJ. Because when they decided to give him the ball in the red zone in the second half, he was scoring. Well, I get it. The 2 interceptions was bad. The first one, I'm not going to say it was a bad read. He just delivered the ball late. Now, the first one was a bad read. He just delivered the ball late. The second one, however, he just stared down his man. And the linebacker was just waiting on him to throw the ball. So, to me, that was just, a young, bad mistake. But I don't think you could put this on JJ. Because at the end of the day, he brought them back in the game. 2-point conversions, touchdowns. Like, he made plays for Michigan to keep Michigan alive. The crazy thing is, Max Duggan didn't even play the game of his life. 14 to 29. He had 2 interceptions himself. Himself. He didn't play the best of games either. What kept them in the game and what, was keeping them afloat was the run game, which we're going to talk about, Miller, if he's able to go for the national championship game, because he went out in the second half and the other guy came in and they didn't miss a beat with the run game. But even though Max Duggan didn't play particularly well, he made the right plays at the right moments. Every time it looked like Michigan had gained momentum and was basically ready to win the game, Max Duggan makes a play. Throws a deep ball to Quentin Johnson. Gives Quentin Johnson another pass, the check down to Quentin Johnson that he takes for 73 yards. And then he had the touchdown run. Max Duggan, and this is why a lot of people are very high on Max Duggan and his chances of winning the national championship. Because like Stetson Bennett, he might not even play a good game, but he will deliver in key moments that you need him to deliver in. TCU relied heavy on the run game. Actually, it was a mirror of two teams. TCU came in with the mindset of just if that's what it is, we just gonna run. And they mixed in the passing game too, but they came in, smash mouth was just giving it to Michigan. Just straight giving it to Michigan. And as a result, TCU came out with the win. Very high scoring, and nobody was really the whole college football playoffs. Nobody was really playing that well of defense. But I think what cost Michigan the most is their play calling, and that's on coaching. As much as you want to look at the players, as much as you want to look at JJ McCarthy and the 2 pick sixes, Michigan has to look back at this game and say, we had 3 opportunities in the first half to cash it in the red zone, and we came up empty. Well, 2 of them we came up empty, and they only had 9 points, all field goals in the first half. If I have 3, see the good teams, especially in the playoffs, what's crucial is cashing in the red zone. No good team, I'm not going to say good team because Michigan is a good team, but no national champion bound team is going 0 of 3 in the red zone with 4 downs to not get a touchdown. You have to cash in. And you look back in that first half, that's an easy 21 points. Easy 21 points you just missed out on. Whether it was turnovers or turnover on downs, that's 21 points off the board if you're Michigan. That can't happen. But again, what plays are you calling? In an era where guys can push the quarterback for QB sneak, you decide to run a fullback dive at the 1? But I was under the impression, or at least what it kind of looked at to me, was Michigan was so worried about Georgia after what happened last season and get into the national championship game that they kind of they kind of just like wrote off TCU. And I think what a lot of people kind of got caught up in is, oh man, the Big 12, who are you guys playing? Like Kansas State, Texas, like y'all not playing comp. And if you ask me, I believe Michigan kind of got caught up in that as well. Michigan is a team that you had a resounding win versus Ohio State at Ohio State. You're looking at TCU like y'all didn't play anybody as good as Ohio State, and we just handled them. We won our conference. Y'all didn't. Oh man, we're gonna walk through y'all. I'm not saying Jim Harbaugh is a bad coach. I'm not saying that he's not a guy that can gather the troops and get his guys ready. However, if you look at that game and just the play calling, you have no choice but to look at the coaching. I don't know their percentage in the red zone in the second half, but they were scoring a lot more in the red zone when they just gave the ball to JJ McCarthy. Like, once they just put the ball in his hands and he was doing what he does with his legs, just let him go ahead and do his thing. I don't know why they didn't do that. And if you're a guy who just thinks that this is all on JJ McCarthy, I challenge you to actually look at what was going on in the game. Because if you did look at what's going on in the game, it clearly wasn't. Props to TCU. They went out there and handled business. Like I said, every time it looked like Michigan was poised to take the lead in the third quarter, Max Duggan came right back, counterpunch. And then, of course, that second pick six is what really hurt JJ McCarthy and that Michigan offense. So, but again, props to TCU. As a Georgia Bulldogs fan, I'll be the first to tell you, the Bulldogs did not deserve to win that game. They did not deserve to win the game. That was by far their worst performance of the season. And they looked pretty bad versus Missouri this season. But I promise you, as for somebody that watches Georgia very closely, the way I do as a fan, that was by far our worst performance of the entire, really the last 2 seasons. We didn't even look that bad versus Alabama in the SEC championship game. I want to give a sincere apology to CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud has been under heavy fire this past season, and I've been one of the guys, one of many people who have been on his back, been on his head about him as a quarterback. Never questioned his abilities, never questioned his talent. I've just questioned his heart and his performances under big moments. I even came up here and said that his college career is overrated as far as the standard for an Ohio State quarterback. You were starting for 2 seasons, no wins versus Michigan. In fact, the 2 times that you were quarterback, they get their 2 wins versus you in a long time. First the one at Michigan, then in Columbus where they haven't won since I was born, 2000. No national championships appearances, and of course no college football appearances until this past year. I want to give an apology because I was wrong. CJ Stroud by far was the best player this whole college football semifinals. He was the best player, offense and defense. Matter of fact, forget the college football playoffs. This whole postseason of bowl games, CJ Stroud was the best player. This entire month of bowl games and all the other postseason stuff, he was the best player. He played the best versus the best team in the nation for really the past 2 seasons. Now, granted, is it the same defense from last year? No, it's not. However, is this defense a slouch at all? No, still number 1 defense in the nation, just like last year was. They give up a little bit more points, but still, it's still the number 1 defense in the nation. Still got Jalen Carter, still got Ringo, still got guys who are NFL bound, but it's obviously not last season. But they're still the number one defense in the nation. CJ Stroud put on a performance for the ages. He played a perfect game. Perfect game. I don't think a quarterback could have played any better. When Ohio State and USC was battling for the 4th spot, I wanted to play Ohio State. Me personally, I said if I'm Georgia, I would rather see Ohio State than USC. Because I believed, and I still think, Caleb Williams is out of this world special. Caleb Williams is the type of quarterback that scares me. Before, obviously, the performance CJ put up, I looked at CJ and his body of work, and I'm like, he doesn't really scare me. Like, I don't go into the game like, oh man, we got to deal with CJ Stroud. Like, no. And the reason why I said that was because he's not a person that threatens you with his legs, right? He's going to sit in the pocket. He's going to make his reads. He'll bounce out occasionally, but he's not going to kill you with his legs. And that's exactly what he did versus Georgia. That's exactly what he did. And honestly, you can't even blame Georgia for not having a way to stop it because it's not in the game plan. Georgia is a team that blitzes, if not every single down. Georgia is bringing guys to every single down. When you blitz, it's man coverage across the board, and it's nobody in the middle. Now sometimes they'll bring down a safety, or have a corner blitz, and maybe leave a linebacker in the middle. But most times if they blitz in, they bring in all house, and and everybody is 1-on-1. And CJ was exploiting that in ways we've never seen before. I don't think he's ever used his legs the way he used them last week in his college career. And if you ask me, I think if you're whoever team has the number one pick, you have to look at CJ as a strong consideration for number one. Now, I still think Bryce is out of this world, and if I'm a GM, I'm still taking Bryce. However, from where we was at a month ago when I said it was no doubt you take Bryce number one to the performance he put on, to the performance CJ Stroud just put on, where he has the ability to use his legs, you have to look at CJ as a strong consideration for number one. You have to. I'm not saying CJ should go number one. However, if the Texans or whoever, if they decide to pick CJ number one, I wouldn't be mad at that. I don't think it would be a bad move based off of what we saw. Because we saw a guy who decided to use his legs occasionally, right? And how it helped his team. Not only scrambling, but also movement in the pocket. Extending plays. Things that we rave about Bryce Young and Caleb Williams for, and what we were waiting for CJ to become. Because he's always had this, but people have just been hammering the tables, and especially Ohio State fans like, yo, we know you can be that. Why not just go out there and do it? And in a situation versus Georgia where he had no choice to, because no quarterback is just going to be able to sit in the pocket and just observe, the field. Like, it's going to be pressure. So in a situation where he has to be mobile, he was able to do that. And he put on one of the best performances probably we've ever seen in the college football playoff era. Ohio State in general, their defenses will let them down. Their defenses will let them down. In the first half, you're up 14. I believe in the second quarter, Georgia comes right back, ties the game, takes the lead. What did CJ do? Right before the quarter ends, or the half ends, he goes on a touchdown drive. This is really what was the game changer. Ohio State was up 14 in the red zone, probably going to score a touchdown. And this is what a lot of people are saying is the game changer. CJ Stroud is under pressure, is about to throw the ball away. Marvin Harrison Jr. has a chance of catching the ball, and the safety comes out and just cracks him. A flag comes out. People thought it was going to be targeting. Refs revealed it, found out it was not targeting. And Ohio State had to settle for 3. Now, As far as was the call targeting or not, I don't believe it was targeting. And the reason why I don't believe it was targeting, and really this is a rule that a lot of people, including myself, really just are really confused on, because not only has it been called inconsistently, it's just nobody really knows at this point what's targeting and what's not. Is it leading with the crown of the helmet? Is it, excessive force of the body? Nobody knows what it is at this point. Because if you look at the play, he didn't lead with the crown of his helmet. And if anything, was it forceful contact to the head and neck area? Probably. However, that's not how they've been calling it. More times than not, if they're looking at a targeting call, they're going to look at, does he hit with the crown of his helmet? Is there visible contact to the head or neck area of the receiver? Was Marvin Harrison defenseless? Most definitely. Definitely, he was defenseless. He's trying to catch the ball, and the safety is coming at him full speed. There's no way he can defend himself, so he's defenseless. However, there was no contact to his head. It was all shoulder, and then obviously he finished with the forearm. It was a textbook tackle, really. He led with the shoulder and didn't hit him in the head. It was a big hit, yes. And a lot of people saying, oh, Ohio State would have won if Marvin Harrison Jr. stayed in the game. Marvin Harrison, I believe, had 5 catches, 102 yards, and 2 touchdowns in the first half. In the second half, however, or at least in that third quarter, Georgia made the right decision in putting help over the top versus Marvin Harrison, which is what I thought they should have done all along. I don't know why they bought in to this, Kilo Ringo versus Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, we all know Kilo Ringo is not going to be able to guard Marvin Harrison Jr. Number one, nobody can. So that's why he was cooking. It's because he was one-on-one. If you listen, I don't care. There's only a handful of cornerbacks I believe can actually handle a good receiver one-on-one. Other than that, no real good wide receiver is going to be locked up one-on-one, like no help. So they put the safety over the top, and as a result, Marvin Harrison Jr. didn't have any yards in the second half. Obviously, did he get hurt in the third quarter? Yes. But the third quarter was it was only 30 seconds left in the third quarter when he got put out. So from 15 minutes starting in the third quarter to the 2 or 3 possessions they had in the third quarter, Marvin Harrison didn't have any yards, any touchdowns, any catches. So I'm just saying, even if he did continue to play, am I saying that he was going to continue to have no catches? Obviously not. He probably would have had a couple, but I don't think he would have went as crazy in the second half as he did in the first, because he wouldn't have been on the island by himself with Kilo Ringo. He would have had safety. He would have to deal with safety help. Mind you, Ohio State defense gave up 18 points in the second half. 18 points. Oh no, in the fourth quarter. They gave up 18 points in the fourth quarter. There's no way you can call yourself a championship team if your defense is giving up 18 in a quarter. I think it was 18 in a quarter. I might have been wrong. It might have been second half. Like I said, CJ Stroud and the offense did everything you wanted to do for them to win the game. The defense is what let them down. Like I said, it was the worst game or worst performance they've had this whole season. And even Kirby Smart said it. He said our quarterback has to play better, and as a team we have to play better. We're not going to beat TCU playing like this. And I agree with them. Stetson Bennett didn't have the best game. However, just like we talked about Max Duggan, Stetson Bennett made the right plays at the right moments. The pass to Arian Smith, the last 2-minute drive to take the lead. He played well, made great reads, made great passes. So you're looking at a guy who's Stetson Bennett. If you give him a chance, if you give him hope, he's going to take that opportunity. He's going to exploit that. If you're going to dead him, you have to dead him early. which I feel like they did a good job of in the first half. However, in the second half, it was just like it's like they had no answer. It's like everything they did in the first half was just out of this. It was out of here. And this was the difference in the second half for both teams. Georgia's defense got the stops when they needed to. Ohio State couldn't stop the bleeding defensively. But Georgia on their defense, and the thing I like about Georgia's defense, even though it's not as good as the one last season, their defense will bend as far as you can bend, but it will never break. Georgia gave up to that point 40-something points in a game. Would have never thought somebody would put that many points up against Georgia. But they still find a way to get key stops. The sack on the first down, or first or second down, when after CJ Stroud had that big run. That was a huge sack. Pushed him back like 10 yards, 10, 15 yards. Then, on the third down, you pressure CJ into throwing the ball away. Now you're looking at a 50-yarder. And a lot of people, obviously, if you're the kicker and you miss the game-winning field goal, a lot of people, you're the scapegoat, right? I look at it like this. It's a college kid. A 50-yarder is not a gimme. It's not a gimme at all. Then on top of that, Kirby Smart ices him. And he just missed it badly. He did miss it badly. But honestly, I don't really look at him to blame, because in that situation, bro, like, it's a lot of kickers that's missing that field goal. You got to also put into consideration that game was played in Atlanta. Majority of the fans there are Georgia Bulldog fans. So the stadium, it feels like a home game for Georgia. So you can imagine on that last field goal, the noise and the pressure he was feeling. Totally don't blame him for that. It's a kid in college, 19, 20 years old, max. Can't really blame him from that. If anything, you have to blame the team for putting him in that situation. Unless it's a gimme field goal, like a 25, 30-yarder, a 50-yarder is not a gimme. Like, we live in an era where guys consistently hit 50-yarders, and we look at it as normal. Like, a 50-yard field goal is not a gimme. Like, that's not a gimme at all. You look at Georgia's field goal kicker. He missed 2 of them. A 47-yarder. A 47-yarder, and I believe like a 44-yarder. Like, these field goals are not gimmies. Majority of the blame is going to go to the defense. There's no way you allow 18 points in a half or quarter, whichever one it is. You do not allow 18 points. Georgia finished the game ending off on an 18. They outscored Ohio State in the fourth quarter 18-3. That cannot happen. I can't say enough about Stetson Bennett and the player that he's become. From a guy who was a walk-on, went back to play JUCO, came back, a lot of people doubted him, including me. Won a national championship game, had iconic moments last year. Now this season, winning and coming back in the fashion that he did, you can't say enough about this guy and the job he's done. You look at the game, didn't play well. The team as a whole didn't play well to win. However, this is how you know Georgia is turning the tide of their history. And if anybody know, I know. And like Drake said, if anybody know, I know. Like, over the years, what happened to Ohio State has happened to Georgia so many times. SEC championship game in 2012. The national championship game in 2018. SEC championship game in 2019. Or 2018. Like, this repeatedly happens to Georgia every year. The Auburn game. I can't remember. I think it was 2013, 2014, wherever that was, when Nick Marshall went on him. Like, all this stuff that happened in Ohio State, Georgia has a history of it happening to them. And to see Georgia actually turn it around and actually be the team that comes back from a deficit like that shows you the team that Kirby Smart is building in Georgia and how things have started to turn around. You look at a team like Alabama, who is not looking as dominant as we've seen the past decade. Look where Georgia's headed You can't, there's no denying that Georgia looks like the next SEC powerhouse. The next team bound to be dominant over this next decade, like Nick Saban and his Alabama teams. But you can't say enough about Stetson Bennett, the job he's doing. He's about to go for his second national championship back-to-back. A college team hasn't done that since Nick Saban did it in 12 and 13. I don't think Georgia will play as bad as they played in that game. And I think Kirby will have them extremely locked in versus TCU. Extremely. Because I feel like those guys know it as well. Again, you got a veteran team. Those guys know that they didn't play well. So they're going to come in this next game extremely locked in. And I think Kirby Smart would do a good job of keeping them locked in on this TCU team, who's not a bad team, who has an explosive offense, just like Ohio State does, who has an explosive wide receiver in Quentin Johnston, just like Ohio State does, who has a mobile quarterback, just like Ohio State does. So it's not like, oh man, we had to get through Ohio State, we let off the hook now. No, you're going to have to play against a team that's kind of similar offensively. So as long as Georgia plays Georgia football, they'll win. TCU coming into the game, you have to look at what Ohio State did. You look at Marvin Harrison Jr., how he was able to exploit the one-on-one matchups. You got a guy in Quentin Johnston who I believe is better than Marvin Harrison Jr., who I believe will be the first wide receiver taken in the draft. So you have the depth, you have the right roster, you have the right personnel to go out and win this game versus Georgia. What's key to them is you cannot let Georgia hop on you quickly. You can't let them get on you quickly. You have to control the pace of the game, exploit one-on-one matchups, and get physical at the line. As much as we praise Stetson Bennett, make Stetson Bennett beat you for the whole 48 minutes. The whole 48 minutes. Make Stetson continuously have to beat you with his arm the entire game. Because when you allow him to mix in with the run game, he's dangerous. When Milton and all those guys get in, and Edwards, and like, it's dangerous. So you have to find a way to get physical at the line and make Stetson, you stack the box, whatever you got to do, make Stetson Bennett beat you with the arm. And offensively, if you're TCU, you know the blitz is coming. Max Duggan, continue to make plays with your legs, not to scramble, not all the time to go out and run for yards, but look for guys that are open. Quentin Johnston is obviously the biggest guy on the field. Like, running, he's the biggest guy you have. So, and again, I don't believe that Georgia would come out and make the same mistake they made versus Ohio State and just like go straight man versus them, because that would be so dumb. If you couldn't handle the second best receiver in the nation, what you think is gonna happen if you play the number one receiver in the nation? He will beat you by himself if you go one-on-one. And I'm sure Max Duggan is praying to the gods that Georgia man up. I don't think Georgia will man up against them. I still think they'll find a way to blitz, but it'll be out of zone. It won't be out of man. I think they're done with that. Hopefully they are. Hopefully. But if you're TCU, continue to play your game offensively. Max Duggan has to use his legs, because if he doesn't, they won't survive. And TCU's defense cannot let Georgia just run the ball all over him. They were able to stop Michigan's run game. Outside of the big 70-yard gang that Donovan Edwards had against with Michigan, Michigan couldn't really do nothing on the ground for the rest of the game. So if you're TCU, find a way to stop the run game. Make Stetson Bennett beat you with his arm.